Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, all Detroit Lions, friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. Folks, there is no need to beat around the bush with this one. It's been, widely now reported. Ian Rappaport pushed it out. Adam Schefter pushed it out. It's everywhere, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. Frank the Tank Ragnow has officially come out of retirement, and he is coming back to play for the Detroit Lions. I'm going to just tell you this right now. How do you feel having Christmas morning early? Because that is exactly what this is. That is exactly what this news is. I would state for probably 99% of all Lions fans. This is news that absolutely 100% it changes everything. Now, how fast it changes everything, that's the only question that remains yet open for debate. Because let's understand something here. I don't know if the Lions, are talking with Frank Ragnow, if Frank Ragnow's the one that initiated the conversation with the Lions. I don't know exactly the details of that. I'm sure that's going to come out more in the coming hours and days and whatever else. But to me, it's almost kind of like a godsend that this particular thing happened right now. Because you have to think about it here. The Lions are getting set to play against the Green Bay Packers. They're getting set to play a game which has an immense amount of stuff riding on it. What better thing could you possibly have to motivate you? Even though the Lions don't need motivation, they're more than highly motivated as they are. But what better thing could you possibly get to really motivate yourself than to all of a sudden find out that one of your best players, one of your best teammates, one of the best individuals as far as human being, player, the whole 9 yards, is now coming back to the ball club? I'm going to tell you this right now. I know for a fact that the Lions players on that ball squad, especially those that were there last year, they've missed the hell out of Frank Ragnow's presence. They've missed him being around in practice. They've missed him being around, in games. They've missed his leadership. They've missed his personality. They've missed everything about him. And now all of a sudden, here you are, and you're getting ready to play one of the biggest games of the year, and you now find out that, hey, we're getting him back. Obviously, he's not going to be able to suit up for the Thanksgiving game. That's not going to happen. But it's like that news, that ability to have him back, it's almost kind of like an inverse of what the Packers went through with getting Micah Parsons. It's like, oh, you guys got Micah Parsons, and that gave you guys a quote-unquote jolt. Now we're getting back Frank Ragnow. Now we're getting back the best center in the NFL. Because let's call it for what it is. Before Frank Ragnow retired, he was the best center. Because after, what's his name retired? Jason Kelce retired. Pretty much Kelce and Ragnow were pretty much center 1A, 1B in terms of who was the best. Those two were the best at what they did. And when Kelce officially retired, Ragnow became the best center. Ragnow coming back now means that the Lions have the best center along with the best right tackle on that offensive line once again. However, though, while the news is great, and it obviously is going to, shoot a direct shot of lightning bolt into the entire Lions organization and Lions fandom, there are a couple of questions that this whole kind of situation for me instantly arose as soon as I heard the news. Question number one. How soon is he going to be able to get back to actually playing with the Detroit Lions? That's part of the reason why I'm wondering if, the Lions talked to him or if he talked to the Lions. I don't know how that whole thing worked, but it's like they couldn't have picked a better time for this to happen other than the actual bye week. Because after this game Thursday that's, happening tomorrow, the Lions are going to have a mini bye week. they're going to have a week and a half about to get ready for their next opponent, which is going to be the Dallas Cowboys. And funny enough, that's going to be a home game. I mean, Frank Ragnow's he played the sport for, 7-something years? All of it with the Detroit Lions. According to what we've been told the entire offseason, this offense is virtually pretty much the same. It's just a little bit of tweaking in language and a couple of other things. So I wouldn't imagine it's going to take a hell of a lot of time for Frank Ragnow to get up to speed with the offense and, get back to the groove of things. Because apparently what all the reports are is that he's healthy, he's ready to go right now, he feels absolutely good to play. So you have to ask yourself, okay, well, how conservative are the Lions going to realistically be with this? Are they going to hold him out for the Cowboys game and bring him back for the Rams game? Are they going to hold him out for both games? I don't know. So it's a really interesting question to kind of figure out, okay, well, what's the timetable here? How soon before Frank Ragnow actually dons number 77 again and he's back to snapping the ball to Jared Goff? That's question number one. Question number two, what the hell happens with Graham Glasgow? The obvious answer, in my opinion, would be, okay, obviously he's not staying at center now with Frank Ragnow coming back. There ain't no chance in that. There's no chance in hell of that happening. So that would then mean that based upon the interior of the offensive line where it is right now, he would then slide over to the left guard position, which obviously we know Graham Glasgow does not like playing that position. But I'm just going to call for what it is. Sorry about your bad luck, dude. It's like, listen, you've been average at best as a center. You've not been great. You've not exactly been terrible either, but it's like, you're no Frank Ragnow, dude. Let's be honest with ourselves and let's call a spade here. And let's also call a spade in this regard too. Glasgow is better than what we're going to be getting out of Cade Awasika. Awasika has done admirable in filling in ever since Mahogany went down, but he's not going to be able to have the experience that that Glasgow has at that position. So now, if that was the move, you would then have Graham Glasgow back at left guard, you'd have Frank Ragnow at center, and then you'd have Tate Ratledge at right guard. That is a hell of a lot better of an interior offensive line than what we had literally earlier this morning. Because it's like, okay, we're still dealing with, Graham Glasgow, we're still dealing with Awasika, and we're still dealing with Ratledge. And, Ratledge is playing very good for a rookie, but it's like, the interior is still where the weakness is. You bring back Frank Ragnow, and it's like, okay, that interior just became just got a massive upgrade. Now, instead of it being a liability, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a position of strength now, but it's definitely stabilized. It's definitely not an area of concern or weakness. At least, and this leads me into my next question, this leads me into my next point. What are we going to be getting Frank Ragnow for? And what I mean by that is this going to be just a short-term come out of retirement hiatus, or is he actually going to stick around long-term? Now, obviously, that's not a question a lot of people are going to want to concern themselves with right now, but it's a question that's honestly on my mind because it's like, okay, here, there's 6 games left for the rest of the year. We're about to play that 6th game, which means there's only going to be 5 games left. So you'd have to think that if the Lions get into the playoffs, that means that Frank Ragnow is only coming out of retirement for this year for at least a bare minimum of 6 games. So you'd have to ask yourself, well, is he only coming out of retirement for 6 games, or is he coming out of retirement and actually going to stay with the Lions going into next year? Because if that happens, now everything changes for the Detroit Lions as far as not only free agency needs, but also draft needs. And what I mean by that is now you're not looking at trying to potentially draft a number 1, overall pick or a number 1 first-round draft pick to replace, Graham Glasgow at center. Now you could say, okay, well, we could use that first-round draft pick on potentially getting a good backup for, Frank Ragnow to study, to be mentored by, or we could use it to find somebody else on the interior, or potentially a left tackle to replace Taylor Decker, Or, which I know a lot of Lions fans would also love this too, get another damn edge rusher opposite of Aiden Hutchinson with that first round pick. I don't know. But that's now a big question that now everybody's going to start asking. Well, is Frank Ragnow's retirement, as far as coming out of it, only temporary, or are we looking at a more long-term potential return? Are we looking at him being back for at least a year or two, or is he only coming back for the 6 games, and then once the playoffs come and go, is he going back into retirement? These are questions that as soon as I heard that news, I was like, okay, this is absolutely fantastic, great news that he's coming out of retirement. But there are some questions as to what and when this whole thing is going to execute itself. When's he going to be back on the field? What does it mean for Graham Glasgow and as far as the interior of the offensive line? Which I think that's probably the easiest question to answer because it makes just the most sense to move him to left guard. But the biggest question that does not have a lot of answers right now because we don't know how long Frank Ragnow is going to be back for is this short term or is this a long-term return? That's the main question that's on my mind right now. But the big piece of news, the big, whatever when it comes to this whole particular situation is, okay, the Lions have now fixed or now got a solution, because I don't know if I'd call it fixed. I don't know if they actively were trying to bring Frank Ragnow back, but they've got an active solution which is going to shore up the interior of that offensive line. And let's understand something here. If the interior of that offensive line is shored up, running game gets better. Jared Goff's pass protection gets better. Offense gets better. Which now means, hey, if the defense can keep playing like it's played, 10 out of the other 11 games that it's played for the majority of the year, now everything's flipped on its ear. But again, that goes back to the first question that I asked. How soon before Frank Ragnow is actually, putting back on cleats, putting back on shoulder pads, and getting back into the lineup? Is it going to be next week against the Cowboys, or is it going to be the week after that against the Rams? I don't know. If there's one thing we do know about the Lions is that they like to be kind of conservative with all this. But I would like to imagine that with Frank, in the past, whenever, Campbell would be wanting to play conservative with him, I still remember the story where Frank came up to him and socked Campbell in the arm, and he's like, I'm good to go. And he was like, okay, you're good to go. I would just imagine that would be probably a similar mindset once, obviously he's cleared the physical and, everybody knows that he's good to go. It's like, okay, so long as the mental aspect is good to go and we know physically he's able to perform, okay, right back into the lineup you go. But again, those are all questions that we're probably going to get answered over the next week and a half before we get to the Dallas game. But like I said, if you want to talk about an absolute bolt of lightning to the Lions fan base and to the Lions organization, Frank Ragnow coming out of retirement, that is definitely, one of those types of pieces of news that absolutely, I guarantee you, has now got everybody excited as hell. And I guarantee you, nobody is more excited about it than the other offensive linemen, and I would be willing to bet Jared Goff. Because it's like, okay, he's getting back his center. He's getting back the guy that, worked with him as far as, with protections and the whole 9 yards. So I'm telling you this right now. The rest of those offensive linemen are probably happy as hell, and Jared Goff is probably the most happiest individual in the entire room because he's like, okay, I've now got back my center. I've now got back the guy that I know for 100% is going to be able to take care of everything. And that's not a knock necessarily on Graham Glasgow, but again, it goes back to like what I said. Graham Glasgow is no Frank Ragnow. It's just not even comparable. And it's always better to have a guy that can absolutely do the job and then having a suitable guy to the left and to the right of him to make sure the entire interior of that offensive line is sound. Because I guarantee you this, Jared Goff's going to be feeling a lot more safe in that pocket knowing Frank Ragnow's directly in front of him. Guarantee it. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to talk about this really quickly. I didn't anticipate making 4 videos today, but Boy, oh boy, I was absolutely glad I had a chance to make this one. So I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all, if you enjoyed the content, to please subscribe to the channel. Which, by the way, if you subscribed in the past and forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, want to encourage y'all, make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Hope y'all are doing well and hope y'all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile, which I guarantee you this news for most people will. But I also hope you have a great Thanksgiving tomorrow. And with that, I just want to say God bless, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.